74,000 years ago, the largest volcanic explosion in the history of the human race unleashed a global catastrophe. It leveled 8,000 square miles of lush jungle, cut off sunlight for 10 months, and caused temperatures worldwide to plummet. Our ancestors, the first Homo sapiens, were nearly wiped out during this dark volcanic winter. This is the unknown story of how the human race almost died. Fire and ice on Animal Armageddon. Planet Earth, 74,000 years ago. This is the Pleistocene era. Although it may not look it, this is the Ice Age.
The Ice Age is a misnomer. In reality, it was ice coming, ice going, 15,000 years building up, a few thousand years losing it back and forth. So the world's climate goes from really mad ice everywhere to these inter-ice periods.
This is one such inter-ice period. Thick jungles stretch all the way into North America and Asia. Even the Sahara Desert is lush and green. In this vibrant world, the most remarkable species yet flourishes: man. The first Homo sapiens, or knowing man, appeared in Africa some 200,000 years ago. Despite obvious differences in culture and social structure, they look very similar to humans today.
Well, let's go back to 74,000 years ago. We bump into our deep, deep ancestors here. We don't share language, of course, but we certainly share features. From a facial point of view, from a body point of view, there's going to be no telling the difference between us.
Their primitive tool-making skills and native intelligence have allowed them to succeed where other forms have failed. From their meager beginnings in Africa over 130,000 years ago, our Stone Age counterparts have spread around the globe. Though they couldn't possibly know it, in 7 days, mankind will become an endangered species. In what is now the Indonesian island of Sumatra, a terrible volcanic apocalypse gathers beneath the Earth's crust. 74,000 years ago, Sumatra is a place of pristine beaches and lush jungle landscapes. But beneath this serene island, a killer lurks: the Toba supervolcano.
Supervolcanoes don't look like the classic volcano that most people imagine. A beautiful cone-shaped volcano like Mount Fuji or one of the Cascade volcanoes. Instead, it's an enormous depression.
The landscape of the 60-mile-wide supervolcano is what's known as a caldera, a crater left by a previous volcanic eruption 200,000 years ago. The rains have partially filled the crater, resulting in a small lake. The lava chamber looming below formed as the Indo-Australian plate steadily ground against the Philippine plate over the course of thousands of years. The intense heat and pressure is enough to melt rock.
So this is your old case of an irresistible force running into an immovable object. And the immovable object is very sticky silicate rocks with heat coming up from underneath. And it holds, it holds, it holds, it holds, it holds. And when it does break, it isn't like a little piece going out of a dam. It's the whole dam shattering and blowing outward and blowing up.
It may have taken thousands of years to form, but it will erupt in an instant. And when it does, the entire world will feel its wrath. It's just 3 days before the eruption, but life goes on as usual. Sumatra and much of the rest of southern Asia is home to a variety of animal life. Much like our own animal kingdom, through a bizarre looking glass.
Things that were alive back then were much larger. The cats were larger, the dogs were larger, there were larger apes around. There's actually a whole fauna of large-bodied animals that we've lost since that time period.
Atop the supervolcano itself, Elasmotherium graze on tall grasses. They are the ancestors of today's rhinoceros, but are similar to horses in skeletal structure. They stand nearly 7 feet tall, but the horn adds another 6 feet. Some historians believe that Elasmotherium is the source of the unicorn myth.
Evolution makes things get bigger. It's called Cope's rule, and there's a simple reason for that. The bigger you are, the less chance you have to get eaten up by the predators.
Elasmotherium's most feared predator is the Sumatran leopard. These cats are the apex predator on the island. Sleek and powerful, they're the size of a modern lion with the speed and agility of a cheetah.
The big cats were big because their prey was big. And you have this back and forth. It's an arms race. As your prey gets bigger, you need bigger teeth, bigger claws, a bigger jump. You've got to have the equipment to bring it down.
These are the creatures that will experience firsthand the terrible power of the Toba supervolcano. The countdown to eruption begins. For weeks, these creatures have lived with the periodic rumbling of the earth. But something much worse is brewing. Magma shifts beneath their feet. Then Toba unleashes a powerful earthquake that rocks the jungle. Trees topple. The 5-ton Elasmotherium can hardly stand up. Cracks begin to form in the nearby lake bed. Noxious volcanic gases belch to the surface. Clouds of the poisonous sulfur gas roll through the jungle, choking Elasmotherium to death. These are Toba's first victims, but they won't be the last. The swelling bubble of magma has stretched the crust to the breaking point. One of the worst volcanic eruptions in Earth's history is seconds away. For our ancient ancestors, this might be the end of the world. The ground above the supervolcano begins to implode. The roof literally caves in from the crushing weight of the Earth's crust, hammering the massive chamber of liquid rock below like a giant piston. Magma explodes toward the surface, vaporizing huge amounts of groundwater. All over the jungle, towering geysers burst open almost in unison. Then the hiss of steam finally gives way to the thunderous crack of rock splitting open. The eruption is 3,000 times greater than Mount St. Helens.
Toba is the biggest volcanic eruption that science has been able to identify. It could have been the biggest volcanic eruption of millions of years, maybe of all time. We do know that it dwarfs anything that's happened in the last 100,000 years.
Thousands of animals are consumed. Just a flash of light, heat, then nothingness. Still, the explosion rages, hurling molten rock, ash, and noxious fumes into the air.
You see these plumes of smoke come out, and the gases and ash particles are being spread around close to the volcano, and then maybe all of a sudden it was just too much and then it blew catastrophically.
As the magma chamber collapses inward, the edges of the volcano were stretched and cracked. These are the weak spots from which the magma explodes. Those animals killed instantly are the lucky ones. Others see death approaching, a rolling cloud swallowing up the landscape. These clouds of debris, called pyroclastic flows, completely destroy anything in their path. They steamrolled the jungle, mixing with scorched earth, water, and debris.
It's so hot it turns into a pseudo-liquid and flows forward, rushing over and burning everything in its pathway. It's just this flow of hot ash coming at you, like Pompeii back in ancient Roman times, and it just burned everything in its path.
Reaching temperatures of 1,500 degrees Fahrenheit. These white-hot flows travel over 60 miles per hour, over twice as fast as a human can run. It's faster than Elasmotherium and even the Sumatran leopards.
Being overrun by a pyroclastic flow would be a really chaotic, devastating experience of which life would be over almost instantaneously. It'd be turbulent and it would be excessively hot.
Any humans caught in a pyroclastic flow suffer a cruel and torturous death.
When we look at the remains of humans that have been overrun by pyroclastic flows, we find that body fluids boil, skull sutures burst because of brains volatilizing. This would be a really sudden, catastrophic event to the body, and death would be quick, agonizing, but quick.
The pyroclastic flows engulf much of the island, traveling over 100 miles from the epicenter in all directions. It will be hours before they settle over the ocean and cool. But the eruption doesn't kill everything on Sumatra. At the island's southern tip, there are living witnesses to the awesome power of Toba. A small hunting party of humans can't help but watch in horror. From this distance, some 200 miles away, they're safe from the heat. The sickening smoke column appears to move in slow motion.
Had you been able to witness Toba, it would have been a show unparalleled. Scientifically, we can't even predict how much light, how much energy is released, in the sense that what would the phenomenon look like from a distance. It would have been amazing. Something like being fairly close to a nuclear explosion.
For several minutes, the ash gathers in silence. Then the thunderous shockwave catches up. For these humans, the sound is literally deafening.
Assuming that they would have survived, it would have probably blown out their eardrums.
The hunters writhe in agony. Toba has announced its lethal dominion over the island of Sumatra. The thunderous explosions continue for 2 hours before they relent. But lava continues gushing from Toba's fathomless belly. This place was once a peaceful habitat for Lasmatherium and Sumatran leopards. Now Toba is a gaping pit, hidden from sight by an enormous ash column. 200 cubic miles of ash pulses into the stratosphere, reaching a height of over 5 miles.
Again, we think of Mount St. Helens as a yardstick. A great deal of dust went up, enough to coat much of Washington State to the east with inches of ash. But the equivalent, if we had had that particular volcano taking place in Washington State, it would have been tens of feet of ash over the entire state.
The ash alone could fill the entire Grand Canyon to the top. As destructive as the eruption was, it is only the beginning. Toba's ash cloud is the volcano's secret weapon. Slowly, this debris will spread out across the world. Soon, every creature on the planet will suffer the lethal power of Toba. The skies, they were ashen and sober. The leaves, they were crisped and sere. Edgar Allan Poe, 1847. 24 hours have passed since the Toba supervolcano erupted. Sumatra is burned and scarred by the disaster. The few humans alive on the island take shelter in caves, dazed, struck deaf by the volcano's explosion and what has happened to their world. And yet a new wave of destruction is already in motion. Vast amounts of ash pour into the atmosphere.
Animals that were around in India and Southeast Asia would have had a very hard time breathing because of all the ash and all the thick particulates in the air.
Toba's ash column towers over the island, 120 miles in diameter and 30 miles high. Ash from Mount St. Helens reached just 12 miles into the atmosphere.
From space, the Toba eruption would have appeared as a growing ellipse of dark ash spreading mostly towards the northwest, but also to the east as well.
It can be seen from Java, 400 miles away. From Burma, 800 miles away. From Malaysia, more than 1,000 miles away. Scientists believe Toba erupted in the summertime, at the height of the monsoon season. Storm systems brewing over the Indian Ocean now gather huge amounts of ash and carry them to the northeast, deeper into Asia.
If you throw dust up into the air in the latitudes of Sumatra, it is going to be transported. So it goes up, this big plume after the eruption goes up fairly high into the stratosphere, but the volume of dust is what is just almost incomprehensible.
2 days after the eruption, a steady rain of ash coats a once lush landscape in what is now Vietnam. This is home to one of the largest apes to ever walk the face of the earth, Gigantopithecus. Nearly 10 feet tall and weighing an astonishing 1,200 pounds, this great ape would tower over the largest living gorilla and weigh nearly 3 times as much. Gigantopithecus is known from fossilized jaws and teeth, which strongly resemble that of orangutans in our time.
Based on living orangutans as a model, we can imagine that Gigantopithecus was a fairly solitary creature, not living in very, very complicated social groups, which is kind of in contrast to the chimpanzee and gorilla model of great apes.
Just days ago, all was well. Gigantopithecus roamed the grassy lowland plains of Vietnam, searching for food.
This isn't something that's going to go out and strangle animals and eat them. And it's a very gentle giant in all probability. Not very smart. You don't have to be very smart to sit in the same place and just pluck, like gorillas, fruit out of the tree.
But Gigantopithecus's delicate world has been destroyed. His diet of bamboo and fruits is gone. He's starving.